So recently I was scrolling through Twitter and and I died. So recently I was scrolling through Twitter and I stumbled upon this tweet by one The Blue Snowplow, reposting a Thomas & Friends Series 1 appreciation post with the following caption. Have we ever considered that the nitrogen unoriginal camera angles phenomenon was actually a deep cut reference to Series 1? Whether this was meant to be taken seriously or not, it got me thinking about Series 1 compared with the Nitrogen era. They both mark the beginning of something for the franchise, and both use a lot of the same angles over and over and over again throughout their episodes. But what makes them different? Why are people okay with this, and not with this? Series 1 of Thomas the Tank Engine was filmed in a small studio in Clapham Junction, about the size of an average household garage. For this reason, the camera had to remain static whilst filming, and only the trains would ever move. There's a couple of moments where the camera zooms in, zooms out, or pans to the side, but they had to be very careful whilst doing so, because if the camera were to move too far, the edges of the set would be revealed, breaking the immersion. So we would often see places like the stations, Gordon's Hill and Henry's Tunnel, usually from the same perspectives throughout the 26 episode run. Perhaps it is more practically impressive to see people working beyond the limitations of a static camera on a model engine set compared to CGI, but that isn't to say Nitrogen didn't have their own limitations. This era, running from series 13 to 16, was the time that Thomas & Friends fully entered the world of CGI. And it wasn't like they could just plonk an engine prop on the tracks and watch it go. They had to manually animate the characters moving across the screen in a way that is believable for a steam engine. Their bodies ever so slightly tilting from side to side as they move, the steam emitting from their funnels and wheels, and perhaps most prominently, animating their faces to talk, marking the first time in the series where the characters' mouths moved. Similar to Series 1, nothing like this had ever been attempted to this scale before, so keeping to the same angles for all their episodes, you could say, was their way of making sure they got it just right. Especially with how they did everything they could to manually create the CGI renders as close to the original props as possible. Series 1 also had the advantage of episodes being 4.5 minutes, compared to episodes from Nitrogen which were well over 8 minutes long. So anytime an angle is reused, it feels more noticeable because they have to meet that much longer runtime. That combined with the very lackluster stories that didn't really call for any unique camera angles, you can't blame them too much for just sticking with what they know. I will admit that Nitrogen sticking to exactly the same angles for 4 whole series does feel lazy, and it wasn't until the Brenner era with the animation from Arc Productions that we really saw how much better the show could be animated in a year's time. But, without Nitrogen's work, you could argue that the Brenner era could have never looked this astounding without the backbone of Nitrogen to work off of. The same way Series 2, 3 and beyond could have never looked this impressive without Series 1 laying the groundwork. Whichever way you want to look at it, it shows that anything in a series, whether good or bad, can and will influence something much greater.